All right, what's going on, guys? In today's video, I want to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be going over the 5 fundamental skills that your child needs to develop in order to be able to score. I don't really see anybody talk about this, and it is so crucial from an overall game development standpoint. So, if you guys enjoy this video, please go ahead, leave it a like. It does help push it out to people in the YouTube algorithm. If your child um, trying to play junior golf at a high level or trying to potentially play Division 1 golf, that's all we talk about on this channel. Come out with 2 videos per week covering that. So if you want to learn more about that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. It's always great to have you. So in this video, like I said, I'm going to be going through the 5 skills. I've got the first hole at Augusta here pulled up just as kind of like a visual for us. So we can kind of identify some of those skills, because I've gone over this in a couple other recent videos. I want to say it's 2 videos ago, going over junior golf plateaus. The different leverage points that we have in scoring, right? So I talk about insight being number one. So statistics. If your child's not tracking statistics, they're going to have a very hard time getting better, especially once they get to around a scoring average of 80. They're just going to run into a brick wall as far as ability to score better. And I'll kind of go over why that's the case with these particular statistics and particular skills that just need to get developed at a higher level. That's harder to see without those statistics. So we need statistics. Number 2, we got strategy. Strategy, fundamentally, as I understand it, is what are we trying to do with each shot? What can we reasonably expect on each shot? Right. So a lot of people get this kind of confused. They try and get into like these super niche scenarios. It's not about the niche scenarios. It's about understanding, okay, what is each shot supposed to be able to do? When am I at a position where I don't have one of those shots? And what do I need to do as a result of that? Okay. Then we have mindset, our ability to stay committed to whatever we're trying to do, right? So if I say, hey, I'm gonna hit this tee shot in a particular way, and then I go and do something else, that's not a very good mindset, right? So mindset. Practice, our ability to develop those skills. So putting in the time, doing it in the right format. Those things all matter quite a bit in order to actually develop skills, right? I can understand what I need to do. I can be sold on that. But if I don't put any work in on it, like I'm not gonna get better at it. At the same time, if I put in work into unrelated stuff, I'm not going to get better at it, right? So it's not just, work on the right stuff. It's work out it in the right format, in the right way, okay? The last one is mechanics. Mechanics are going to make our ability to develop those skills easier, right? So if I have some screwed up mechanics, I could figure out a way to make that work with enough practice. But if I was able to improve those mechanics, I should be able to develop that skill more effectively in practice for less work, and thus perform better on the golf course in my actual scores. See the skill development happen faster, and then have the statistics reflect that, which gets reflected in the scores. Okay, so that's how this stuff all fits together. Most of the time when a junior golfer is stuck, we're screwing up one of or all of those things. This is assuming that your coach is amazing and they have a perfect understanding of mechanics, which is almost not likely to be the case. But let's just say that they're perfect at it, right? Like let's say they're elite, as good as you can do. If you do not have the context of everything else that is discussed, we're going to have a hard time. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump into actually defining these skills here. So the first skill that I would say has the biggest impact on score, especially for higher score players, right? So I'm going to start at less sophisticated scoring and get to more sophisticated scoring. Okay. So I'm actually going to have to zoom in here a little bit. So a lot of people make a big deal about short game, and they specifically talk about it within the context of scrambling. And I very much disagree. I think scrambling is the most overrated skill in golf, or not skill, statistic in golf. But it's closely related to another skill that is very important. And so that other skill is our ability to hit the ball on the green from relatively close distances. So when we miss the green, being able to hit the ball onto the green is one of, if not the most impactful skill as far as lowering scores, especially for higher handicap players. Okay. So I refer to this as compound errors. So what does that mean? It means we hit our tee shot wherever we hit it. We hit our approach shot, we missed the green, which is going to happen a lot for higher handicap players. We missed the green. Do we get that third shot on the green? Talking about par fours, right? Par threes, obviously it's slightly different. Par fives, same deal, except give or take shots. It's our ability to get the ball on the green. And so best way that I've seen this described is being able to carry the ball specific distances, right? So if I say, hey, I've got a flag that is 15 yards away from me, I know if I carry the ball 10 yards, it's going to roll out another 5. that's what I need to be able to do, right? So let's just simplify this here a little bit. I've got my pin wherever it's at. I've got my particular carry number, and I've got my rollout number. This is so crucial because it becomes a Swiss Army knife, right? If you can hit just one trajectory, one spin, it gives you so many options, okay? Now, for players who are a little bit more sophisticated, right, we can develop this a little bit. We can have a medium to higher ball flight. I don't like super high. I don't like the super flop. I think that's too risky. But we can have a medium ball flight and we can have a lower ball flight. We've got to master medium first because medium is the most important. Medium is how do I get up and down from a short-sided scenario? How do I stop the ball relatively quickly, which is the most fundamental skill in short game. If I have a fat side scenario, I can run this out. I can have a lot more options of how I'm going to do that, right? So we can pull the ball further back in our stance, roll it out, and have that shot in the arsenal as well. But if we had a choice between the two, I'd rather just be able to carry the ball shorter distances rather than have it run out a ton, okay? Now, we can obviously get super sophisticated with this, right? So for players who are playing lots of different green types, being able to know how far you're going to carry the ball is super important, right? Because if you have a really soft green that spins really well, then it's like you might carry it all the way to the hole and have it stop there. Versus you might play greens that are super firm. You might have to have a certain amount of rollout. You want to know that ahead of time. So that way it's not like, one of the things I see coaches talk about all the time, which I agree with, is like we want to have landing spots. But if I just give you a landing spot with no ability to execute hitting at that particular distance, then we're doing everything based off of feel, which sounds cool until I say, hey, how good are your feels going to be if you're under pressure? It's kind of similar to saying, it's like, how well are you going to play golf if you're drunk? It's like all your feels are screwed up, right? So you can't rely on your feels. So anyway, fundamentally, that's the first skill that I'd say, being able to carry the ball a specific distance. It's very easy to train. It's a very easy movement to be able to learn. Okay, doesn't mean it's not hard for people, but it's like if you have a halfway decent coach, they should be able to teach you how to chip in about 1 or 2 lessons max. If we're spending an extended amount of time learning how to chip, we've got some issues. Okay, I gotta go find a different coach. All right, so that's the first skill there. Okay, that has a really big impact. Second skill is gonna be the other end of the spectrum. It's gonna be tee shots. Okay, so I've got a little arc drawn out here at Augusta, right? And so this is 70 yards from hazard to hazard, as you can draw a little cone here if you wanted to. That's kind of what tour players are working with as far as their shot pattern with the driver, give or take. So when you see the guys at Augusta, they're laying up and some of them hit in this bunker, they're actually not making a mistake. They just are getting unlucky. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, if I'm in this bunker, maybe I have to deal with this lip, but I'm definitely getting it out of the bunker. Maybe here, like I saw Bryson do on the second day. I can go like that. Versus if I hit it in the trees over here, now I'm pitching out sideways. I've got sketchiness here. It could be gone. And then I have to hit it on the green like that. Okay. And I just don't have a lot of room. So they're saying, hey, I'd rather take more of these open shots here and take this bunker every now and then, comparatively to being in the trees a good chunk of the time and only having a few times where I'm a little bit closer. Okay. So that's what they're actually doing. Long story short, the skill to develop here is being able to keep the ball in play off the tee, right? And so strategically, that involves doing stuff like this, actually mapping the golf courses. And so that's one of the things I teach my students, one of the many things that I teach my students, because when I'm working with players, it's understanding how all this fits together, not just one individual silo. A lot of golf coaches, they'll have their one thing that they do, and then they'll kind of outsource everything else. Be like, you need to talk to your putting coach, you need to talk to your short game coach or whatever. For me, when I'm working with players, our goal is playing Division I golf. I'm not going to be in a position where I'm blaming some other coach for that. I'm going to be looking at what do we specifically need to do, and then saying, okay, hey, here's what we need to do in order to make that successful. So hopefully that makes sense. You guys are enjoying this and you would like to work more closely with me on that, or just even see what that would look like. There's an application below this video. We can fill that out and we can talk about what it would look like for your child and whether it even makes sense for you guys. So anyway, back to the video here. We're trying to develop tee shots here. It's kind of the next thing that we need to do because penalties cost us a ton. So I don't care if they hit it in the rough. I don't care if we're a little bit in the bunker or whatever. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care about it in the middle of the fairway, right? Why do I not care about that stuff? Because our pattern's too big, right? Like if our pattern is a PGA Tour player's pattern, we already can see, hey, there's a percentage of the time where I'm going to hit it in the trees, I'm going to hit it, in the rough, et cetera, et cetera. right? So I'm not concerned about that. What I am concerned about though is can we stay within this kind of 70 or 80ish yard pattern and understand how big our pattern actually is, right? Um, and there's ways to determine how big your child's pattern actually is without them hitting a million golf balls. But again, that's something I'm helping my students on. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at our ability to be sold on that, be able to see that visually, understand how we're going to line up to hit these shots. Alignment, believe it or not, is one of those things that I see is very overlooked by junior golfers and not really discussed by coaches. Alignment is super, super important. Kind of fits in a strategy. Anyway, mindset, our ability to be sold on hitting that particular, tee shot right. One of the things I'm a huge advocate of is working the ball in one direction exclusively, especially for junior golfers. Okay. And so working the ball one way allows us to simplify some of this stuff, allows us to be more mentally sold on the tee shots, allows us to be able to see the shapes a little bit better. Then we got to practice, right? Like we actually got to develop hitting that shot shape again and again and again and again off the tee. So if we're trying to draw this ball, you're seeing it start somewhere in this range and seeing it draw some amount. Sometimes you're going to catch it a little bit straighter, a little bit more left side here. Sometimes we're going to get a little bit more of a pull, et cetera, right? Like we're going to see somewhere in this pattern here, and we want to know what that looks like and be comfortable aiming that. Because this is really what we're aiming. We're not aiming individual shots. It's one of the biggest mistakes I see junior golfers making is saying, hey, I'm going to hit it, I'm going to hit it here because that gives me the optimal angle. It's like, you can't do that. And not only that, it adds pressure to the shot. I understand that there's that common term, aim small, miss small. Maybe people still use that term. I think that's complete nonsense. And I would point to, if you ever played a hole that's like a million miles wide, like let's say the first hole or the 18th hole at St. Andrews, somehow we oftentimes just hit that ball straight. We don't have any problem. We're not hitting it over, into the city. Right? Like we have no problem hitting the ball where we need to hit it. But if I give you a little tiny hallway to hit this ball into, all of a sudden now we can't keep the ball on the planet. Okay. So generally, if we condense the target to a point where we don't have control over that, we don't have the ability to do that, our brain starts to freak out because it recognizes, hey, I can't do that. I can't do that consistently, right? Sometimes we get lucky, but that's what the brain's doing. Versus if I give you tons and tons of room, the brain calms down. It's like, oh, okay, cool. That's no big deal. Normal pattern, and we're going to pipe it. Okay. One of the interesting things I've noticed is even teaching kids how to hit the ball further off the tee, which is one of the things I help kids with, again, is they end up getting more accurate because they're just wailing on their driver rather than trying to guide it or something like that. But anyway, long story short, next skill we need to develop is being able to hit the ball in play off the tee. As simple as that sound, right? In the play off the tee as far as possible. That's kind of the twofold to this. Okay. So right now we got our tee shots and we got our shots around the green. Okay. Hopefully you guys are bearing with me here. Now, once we've got that, the next skill that I see has a major impact, or next two skills. I'm going to do my best to do a list here. We've got our lag putts. So pretty much anywhere on the green. And then we have our putts inside 5 feet is what I'm going to define it as. So our lag putts, there's a little circle in here in the middle here, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Call it like that here. So our lag putts, I'm going to define as anything between 15 and outside of 15 feet that were on the green surface, more or less. Our goal for those putts is to hit that inside 10% of that total distance. So if I have a 20 footer, 10% of 20 feet is, hopefully you said 2 feet. So that's our goal. There's a whole strategy that goes into how we actually actualize that, because having the wrong target is going to create a lot of problems and make it very, very difficult to do that. I don't have time to go into that. This video is already going to be long enough as it is. But anyway, we're looking at these putts and we're saying, hey, I'm trying to hit this inside that 10% circle. Okay. Now I have putts inside 5 feet is kind of my marker here on the other side of this coin of putts we need to make and we have a high probability of making, right? So from 5 feet, realistically, we can be making 75%. Inside 5 feet, closer to 4 feet or 3 feet, we should be looking at 90 or even 100% of those being made, right? Those are very reasonable putts for us to make. And so if we look at our statistics and we have a high miss rate, that's a really easy place to get a little bit better, right? It's not green reading. It's hit the ball in the hole from a very short distance, right? There's just not a lot that goes into those putts. And so it tends to be associated with our mechanics and our ability to start the ball on line. I think most junior golfers screw this up because they spend all this time. Their coaches get them spending all this time at like 10 feet or 8 feet or something like that. And to me, I just think that that's an absolute no man's land of a putt to actually have, because it's like when you have an 8-footer, like you hit a great approach shot, you still have a 50-50 shot of making it. It's like you're not hitting that many approach shots to 8 feet. On the other side, it's a bad chip shot that ends up being like 8 feet. Like it just doesn't make a ton of sense. First, we say, hey, I want you to be rock solid inside 5 feet. Okay, then maybe it makes some sense to hit 8-footers. And it also needs to say like, hey, if I have a 40-footer and I can hit 4 feet, I know I'm going to make that 4-footer a high percentage of the time. Well, it really cuts down our 3-putt rate, which is really the goal of this. So it's a twofold thing here. If we have our lag putting, and then we have our short putts. We got this little ring, which we'll come back to, that we're not going to make these putts right now. It's not the most important thing we need to make. It's not something we need to worry about for a while, but we'll come back to it. Okay. So let's continue with this here. So let me leave some doodles here. So we've got our chip shots, right? Or being able to carry the ball a specific distance. We've got zooming out. We've got our tee shots, being able to hit the ball predictably. And then what we have is our approach shots. Okay. So let's just kind of think of those as like little concentric buckets, concentric circle buckets. So this is the area that I find working with players is where they get stuck. So if your child is shooting 78 to 82-ish right now, odds are one of these things is their problem, if not all of them. Odds are we're probably still not amazing with 3-putting. We're probably not amazing with being able to carry the ball into the green predictably, but we're probably not compounding too many mistakes. We're probably okay at hitting the ball in play. Maybe we hit a ball or two out every now and then, but it's not the biggest issue. This is the one where I see is like, this is the majority of the time I end up spending with students. And as a result of this is the most nuanced that I tend to be with coaching, because I think these are, to some degree, some of the most difficult shots. Is our on-green percentage from these distances, right? Or these kind of distance buckets that we're going to find ourselves in, right? So if I'm playing par fours, let's say I hit the ball, I don't know, 240 and 250, just keep it round numbers here. And so if I'm playing holes that are, let's say they are 375 yards as an example here, I think that's pretty normal for a lot of the boys here. For girls, obviously, it's going to be a little bit shorter than that. So I'm hitting a 250. That means more or less I'm going to have approach shots from, call it 125 yards, give or take a high percentage of the time. It does not make a ton of sense for me to spend a bunch of effort into hitting shots from 175 yards. Doesn't matter how long I am off the tee or how short I am off the tee. It doesn't make sense to put a lot of effort into those shots until I have those shots very frequently, right? What the shots I need to get good at here are first and foremost those kind of, I know this isn't exactly the correct number, but from that 125 yard bucket, right? Sometimes it's going to be a little bit long of that. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit short of that, but it should be somewhere like this is where my approach play should kind of be concentrated in my practice, using a lot of the same color here. That's kind of where my approach shot should be concentrated, right? I don't need these super short ones. I don't need my 40-yard pitch shots. I also shouldn't assume that I'm going to be good at a 40-yard pitch shot when I'm in this type of position here, because I don't practice it. It's not a skill that I've developed here. So again, remember back to the beginning of this. These are all skills that we need to develop. And so we're trying to do these in priority order. For par fives, it's reasonable that we should be able to give ourselves a full wedge, right? Or for a full lob wedge, right? On our layup at least. If we're not able to do that, we're probably playing golf courses that are too long for us, okay? So we got our par fives. The majority of our approach play though, assuming this is decent, when I say decent, I mean like north of 70, 75%. Majority of our work in our approach play is going to come from these kind of middle distance numbers. We are going to have a minority of our work come from these longer numbers just because we don't have them very often, right? So I see oftentimes we have this kind of screwed up. We also want to know what our percentages are from these distances, right? So if I'm at 50%, then I want to know that to try and push to 60%. I don't want to say, oh, I should hit every single green be from this distance. And I sure as heck should not be saying, hey, I want to hit it close to the pin from this distance. That's stupid. That's stupid from every one of these distances. Okay. So we're always prioritizing hit it on the green, and we're going to see that reflected in the greens and regulation statistic. When do you have permission to say, I want to hit it close to the pin? Realistically, never. If you really wanted to push me on that, I'd say if you hit more than 75% of your greens, maybe you can be a little bit more aggressive. Provided that you stay at around 70% of your greens and you need to get birdie conversion rate up, then that would make sense, especially if your proximity is lagging. In other cases, pretty much no, never. Okay. So that's really how we want to be looking at that, right? This is going to be a big chunk of where you're going to see progress from, let's call it 80 to probably low 70s, right? Kind of like 74, 73. If you just develop these skills, though, your child's going to be able to play Division I golf. Like, realistically. They're not going to need to go into this last little bit that I'm going to discuss here. But that's really the order of things that need to get developed here is these ability to carry the right distance, ability to hit it off the tee effectively and keep it in play. Then it's lag putting on our short putts. Then it's an approach play. We've got to do it in that order. A lot of junior golfers, they try to get away from, don't worry about three putting. I want to hit the ball better on approach. It's like, okay, cool. Doesn't matter. That's not optimal for you. Right. So we need to kind of work through it in this right order. And it's like, of course you can have players who shoot 74, who have a penalty problem. Okay, cool. That's fine. And that ends up being what we're working on. Right. So it still works for priority order. It's just worth noting that typically that's how it manifests itself, where we see players who are shooting closer to 90. We have compound error issues. We have tee shot issues. We have putting issues. That's what I'm used to seeing. Right. We are in those kind of middle distances. That's where players get stuck, because what ends up happening is we might need to get better with the pitching wedge, and we spend all our time hitting 7-irons. We might need to get better with hitting these off-speed shots or some wedge shots, and we spend all of our time hitting 8-irons. We're working on our golf swing, right? We're not understanding the strategy of being able to hit one shot shape, understanding how far we're going to have our carry numbers, not understanding, hey, where am I going to leave my ball if I miss the green? Not understanding how to do adjustments, not having enough stability in our pattern to have the ball above the feet or below the feet and know how it's going to come out. Like, those are all the things that get sorted out in this section here. And so that's where I see players jump from, the kind of high 70s, low 80s into the mid to low 70s, right? Now, the last piece here, last place that ends up getting developed, we're going back to this blue circle. This blue circle here is kind of our 10 to 15 footers. These 10 to 15 footers are done last because they're highly correlated with two statistics: our birdie conversion rate and our scrambling, because these are where our bad chip shots end up, and this is where our birdie attempts end up, right? So these are makeable putts, provided a couple of things. Primarily that we're able to get the green reading correct. Okay, so these are the most difficult putts. A lot of the time when you see guys working on tour, this is what they're working on. That doesn't mean that your child needs to be working on this. Odds are they probably don't. But the best players that I work with, this is what we're working on, right? So the players who are ranked 10th in their class, top 50 in their class, is what we discuss, because they're good at everything else. They're hitting 70% of their greens. They don't hit balls out of bounds. They don't three putt. They don't chunk their chip shots or blade their chip shots. They've got all of those skills. This is the main area that we end up having a hole in. And so this is where we end up paying attention to. So things like aim point, highly effective here. Being able to read the greens so we can isolate the variables of, we already have decent speed control, otherwise we'd be three putting. We already have decent line control, otherwise we'd be three putting. So the last variable that we have to figure out is green reading. Okay. So when I talk about this, I often refer to this as being kind of a system, and it is, because each one of these things builds on the prior thing, right? Like all the skills around the greens, on the greens, they build on each other here. And it's important to be able to, for your child to be able to see their game in this level of detail. Because when they play in a tournament, it shouldn't just be, oh, I played bad. It's like one of these things fell apart, right? One of these things was not effective. Could be combinations of these things, could be particular scenarios, but it's one of these things was not effective. Okay. Last little tidbit here I'm going to throw out is, obviously there are skills that do not fall into these categories that I just discussed here. One real obvious one is, I hit it in the trees, now what? The now what is you get back into a position where you actually do have that skill, and you are as conservative as possible in order to get back in that position. You do not try to manufacture some type of ridiculous shot here, because if you watch your child play golf, odds are they probably pull that shot off about a small percentage of the time that they try to actually do it. And so sometimes they look like a hero, other times they make triple or worse. And so when they're out of position, getting back in position, that in and of itself is a skill. that needs to be developed. Okay. So obviously this is just a high level, right? There's all sorts of little nuances that go into this, especially when we get into higher and higher level tournament golf. But these are the fundamentals. These are the skills that need to be developed. And it's important that you understand them. It's important that your child understands them just as a foundation, right? Because if we don't understand these skills and we can't define strategy, mindset, practice, and mechanical stuff that we need to do in order to accomplish these things, okay? And that's why I think most junior golfers end up struggling, is because everything's going into mechanics, but they have no concept of the skills, the strategy, the mindset, the practice. And as a result of that, it's very difficult to have any meaningful, productive mechanical work. Okay. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, like I said, if you want more assistance with this or more help with this for your child, fill out the application below. We can look at their situation and see if they're in a position where I can help them. Regardless, I will point you guys in the right direction based on wherever you guys end up on that. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. If you just want to check out more videos on the channel and learn more about Division I recruitment, development, skill development, etc., go check out some of the other videos. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.